All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to very first Euphrates live broadcast. We're so happy to have you here and watching us talk about Euphrates. My name is Ben Frederick. I am an intern for Euphrates and sort of also the extraordinaire for all things web. And joining us today is the founder of Euphrates, Janessa Gans-Wilder. Say hi, Janessa.
Hi.
And also Laura Tibbetts and Sally Bound from Principia College representing our chapters program. And hopefully in a couple minutes, Joy Schwenker from the board of directors will be joining us to help answer some questions. So we've received a number of questions this week regarding Euphrates and what and things people were curious about. And so I thought we could start off, Janessa, with a question, a well-worded question here. While the work of Euphrates is impressive, it is limited in scope. How can you truly hope to make a lasting impact with so many forces, impressions, and thousands of years of history working against you? And I think probably something to do before we answer that question is maybe describe exactly what it is Euphrates does, and just a rundown of who we are and why we do what we do. So
Great.
take it away. Hi, Joy. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Yeah, Joy Schwenker is joining us from North Carolina, and she is a member of the board of directors of Euphrates. So Janessa, take it away.
Great. How's the volume here?
I can hear you just fine.
Great. Okay, well, welcome everyone. This is a new experiment for us and just a new way to connect with you all about any questions you might have about Euphrates Institute and also to talk shop about Middle East issues. I know these are things that bombard your inbox and your news and your media every single day. And I think that's, to address your question, Ben, that's why our mission is so directly relevant. I think people, we have to take stock of where we are in today's era. We are absolutely inundated with messages and media and events of terrorism, conflict, and things that really promote fear and a sense of hopelessness and despair about this critical part of the world. And this part of the world, the Middle East, is not an area that we can afford to ignore. It's not something we can just forget. It affects our national security interests. Look at the effect of terrorism and all the wars in which we've been embroiled in the region. It affects our energy interests, the oil that we derive from the region, and it affects our religious, this is the birthplace of the three monotheistic faiths. It affects our religions, and it's also affecting growing religious fundamentalism in the world. So it's absolutely critical that each American really takes stock of what's going on and our relationship with the Middle East and the impact the Middle East has on us. So I really believe, and this is based on my personal experience working for the government when 9/11 happened, my 2 years in Iraq, seeing it firsthand, I came away convinced that this is a critical area that directly affects Americans' lives on a day-to-day basis. And when I came home after my 2-year tour, I was just stunned by how little the average American understood and was informed about this part of the world. And all they experienced was either a sense of apathy, make it go away, they've been fighting for thousands of years, I'm tired of it, or a sense of hopelessness. And that's where Euphrates Institute is different. We don't want people just to be informed about this region and about the Middle East, but we want them to be inspired by what's the antidote to terrorism, conflict, and fear. We believe it's hope, peace, and solutions. Visionaries that are on the ground, those are the voices that we need to hear amplified. Those are the things happening that we can be engaged in and help support and help grow. The more we focus on terrorism, the more we tend to grow that in our thought and as a phenomenon. It's like trying to solve a math problem by just staring at the incorrect solution over and over and over again. Well, how do you solve a math problem? You look at the correct answer and you work out from there. And there are so many examples of individuals, of grassroots efforts, of groups, of reform movements in that part of the world that deserve a voice. that we need to hear amplified and that we can be supporting and engaging, and each one of us here at home can play a part in growing those efforts and helping to support those movements. So that's really the key of why, to answer that question, Ben, with all this going on, why is it important? Why should we be focused on these issues, and what role can each of us play? We can each play a directly important role.
Well, yeah, thank you for that answer, Janessa. You mentioned peace, and one of the questions that we've actually, it's sort of a two-part question that we've received is Euphrates Institute believes that peace is attainable, but how do we achieve that peace? Do we just drop our weapons? And then sort of part two of that is, do you think the world is ready for peace right now? Do you think we need the current tactics of war for the time being, or can we just drop our weapons today? And what is peace? And what are you seeing as solutions to that problem at this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll let you all chime in as well, but I think that it's more of a change of focus. Right now we see the only solution to our problems in the region as military solutions. And even the most renowned military experts that I've talked to say that there is no military solution to these problems. It has to be through development, it has to be through education, it has to be through democratic reforms, that you can't just bomb things to oblivion and hope that in the aftermath it sorts itself out. So I think we need to really challenge the amount of funding and focus that we put into military solutions to problems that are really about empowerment and development of a people. I think also that there are the examples of peace being achieved and realistic are not known. And that's the challenge that we're trying to address, that there's a level of ignorance about how effective nonviolent resistance is, for example. Even in the Arab Spring, that those movements were all nonviolent resistance that were attempting to reform those governments and societies, and the ones that were the most nonviolent were the most effective. Grassroots peace efforts in Israel and Palestine that go unnoticed. And I think that there's a danger in that because people don't see the example and the effectiveness of peace. And so we absolutely believe that peace is possible, not tomorrow, but today, because we have dozens of examples of it absolutely transforming people's lives and transforming those societies. What we don't see is we don't see that happening on these top political levels. And I'm not concerned by that because our model of social change that we work with is that this change does have to start at the grassroots, and eventually it will reach a tipping point of change, and the last ones to be affected and come on board is the top level. So this is a study out of Stanford Research Institute by Everett Rogers, where he says once 5% of a population accepts a new idea, it's considered embedded. So the seeds are planted. So let's say 5% of a population says, okay, violence isn't working for us. This conflict has been going on and on and on, and there's a cycle here, and I wonder if we should try something new. Let's try nonviolent resistance or peace. So let's say 5% of the population sees that possibility and accepts it. Well, those are considered the early adopters. We call them visionaries. Those are the voices that we're working with. We're not concerned with the other 95%. We're really focusing on those 5% and trying to firm them up, shore them up, and bolster their efforts. Once 20% of the population accepts a new idea, let's say that peace is possible, it's considered unstoppable. So from that point on, that's the tipping point. The change to a complete overhaul of society and societal transformation is inevitable. So we don't have to be so depressed by the lack of movement and the lack of change that's happening at the top level, because they will be the last to come on board with the idea that peace is possible. We need to focus on strengthening those roots. Who are the early adopters? Who are the 5%? Who are the visionaries? what do they stand for? How do we amplify their message? How do we grow their efforts? How do we support them? How do we connect them to the average American and really get that relationship solidified and help strengthen that? That's where we need to be focused, because that's what eventually creates a tipping point for change. And the politicians and the political level will eventually be forced to come on board. It's inevitable.
So you mentioned, oops, excuse me. Another question that we received, you mentioned peacebuilding, grassroots peacebuilding efforts. Is Euphrates doing anything right now to directly affect peace efforts? You mentioned visionaries, or do we have like somebody on the ground who's in the Middle East working, or how does that work? What does that look like for our institute?
Absolutely. We have we have a person contributing publications and writing so that we know sort of what's going on the ground, and we have our finger on the pulse of events in the region. But more importantly, we take trips annually to Israel, Palestine, and Jordan to connect Americans with those grassroots peace efforts. So just this past fall, we led a trip there that Joy attended, which was great. We met with over 24 grassroots groups in 2 weeks, can you imagine? And to hear their message and what they're working on and how to support them and how to strengthen that conversation between the U.S. and Israeli and Palestinian peace efforts. So that's an important component, that we go and see them directly. We also invite peace builders and visionaries back to the U.S. for events, for conferences, for summits where they can engage one-on-one and together and build up that network. We also honor and award Visionaries of the Year. So we want to do everything we can to promote the message of the most extraordinary vision. There's dozens and dozens of groups, but who are the most extraordinary that really are capitalizing on a theme for that year, or whose efforts have so far gone unnoticed and whose message really needs to reach a wider audience. So each year we focus on a particular person and strengthening their work and their message through our networks.
Excellent. So,
well, I don't know if you want to add anything from your experience or trip there. Ben, you were probably going to ask her that.
Exactly what I was going to ask, yeah.
I'd love to. I'd love to. It was so inspiring to meet with all of those groups. And one woman that we met, I really wish we could have spent more time with her, because I would love to have heard more about what she's doing. But she's been hired to be the executive director of, I think it's Middle East Alliance for Peace, or something like that. And she's working with over 90 groups in Israel and Palestine that are working on peace efforts. And it just, when you meet with so many different groups and hear what they're trying to do and see how their Israelis and Palestinians are working together, they're trying to bring all the different groups together, whether they're teenagers or if they're religious leaders. And are we still here? It's blinking in and out. It's just, it gives you hope. And we don't hear in America about all the wonderful things that are going on, and all the people that are working so diligently, and all the people that do get it, that it is, the basis of all of it is just love your neighbor as yourself. It's forgiving each other if there's forgiveness that needs to be done. But there's so many people that do get it, and they're working very diligently on the ground in that area to bring about peaceful solutions, and they just want to live with their neighbors peacefully. They want to raise their families. They want to do all the things that we take so for granted. But it was really, really inspiring. It was very moving to hear their narratives, their stories of where they're coming from each side, what their family backgrounds, what where they've come from, and how they've gotten to where they are today. And so it's wonderful to be able to support all those efforts.
Thank you, Joy. Another question we've received is this idea that peace is possible is really inspiring, but what is it that the Euphrates chapters are doing to promote peace, and how are they actually accomplishing or contributing to the idea of Middle East peace? I know we've got Janessa can answer that question. We've also got Laura and Sally to chip in on that too, whenever you're ready.
Go for it, Laura and Sally.
Do you want to say anything about chapters in general, and then we can talk about our specific chapter? Or
yeah, it'd be great to work from the wider and then down to what you're doing specifically.
Yeah, sure. So this is a brand new program that's been launched just mid-February, and the idea of chapters came out of basically popular input that people would go on our trips or they'd attend a summit or a conference and would get so jazzed about the idea of being directly engaged in peace building and with the Middle East and how important this part of the world is, and they'd say, great, how can we be directly involved in Euphrates? And our answer was, unfortunately, well, if you're a student at Principia College, then you can join our Fellows program, but other than that, you can read our blogs and website, but there was no direct level of engagement for them. And so this idea of how do you have localized branches, essentially, of Euphrates, people on the ground in their own communities working to inform, inspire, and transform at the local level. So that's where this idea of chapters came from, that let's democratize Euphrates. It can be open to anyone from any school or workplace or place of worship or any community. People really want to inform, inspire, and transform our relations with the Middle East, starting at the ground level. So we now have 10 chapters in just a month and a half, which is phenomenal. To me, it's proof that this concept is needed, and that people really want to not just learn in an abstract way about this region, but want to put it directly into practice. So what are the needs in our own community? What are the needs right here? How can I, with my group of friends or group of colleagues, how do we become more informed and more engaged? So it really is seeing it in action in these local environments, which is very inspiring.
So our chapter specifically at Principia College, one of our main goals is just to help inform ourselves more about the Middle East, because we notice that on our campus there is kind of a lack of knowledge about what's going on, and so our chapter tries to inform ourselves about the Middle East and also help inform our campus. And we also try to focus on positive things that are going on in the Middle East and thinking about solutions as a group. And more specifically, our chapter is made up of several different committees based on... Hi! Yay!
Hi, I'm with you. Good to see you. Sorry it took so long. We just arrived in Lisbon.
Oh my goodness! Welcome! Yay!
Yes,
For all of you who don't know who this celebrity is, this is Thomas Henry Culhane, T.H. Culhane, who was our Visionary of the Year for 2014. And he has just landed in Portugal and is headed to the Tamara Peace Village, which is an eco-village. And we thought with Earth Day coming up, it would be perfect to have him on the call and talk about his latest efforts. TH, we're going to turn to you in just a moment. We're just hearing from Laura and Sally about their activities with the Chapters program, and then we want to turn to you.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So our chapter is made up of several committees based on areas people are interested in the Middle East. So there's a refugees committee, a committee on Christianity in the Middle East, and a children and education committee. And all of those committees are doing separate work as well. One thing we have going on right now is we're doing a fundraiser to help sponsor a girl's education for 1 year in Egypt. And that's something that the Children and Education Committee has been working on. I don't know if you want to add anything about
one of the exciting things that I see happening with Principia College is, these kids are here to learn and go out into the world and take knowledge with them. And because there has been such a dearth of information and classes and things taught about the Middle East, that has been recognized, and Euphrates been able to start to fill in that gap on campus and really invoke a huge interest. Even the faculty are starting to notice that there needs to be more classes taught, more understanding. And so it's been exciting to watch as the students come on board and they're learning about something that's absolutely brand new to them, and watching this enthusiasm, this excitement, even about learning the languages. We had recently we had a professor from St. Louis University come and talk at a Friday luncheon, and she speaks Arabic fluently. She has a lot of experience over, particularly in Morocco. She's an incredible education, and she's got a lot of practical resources to share with the students about learning Arabic, traveling over to the Middle East, and so all of a sudden there's this enormous spark of enthusiasm, and that's what our young folks here are going to be taking out when they graduate, and that's what's exciting to me, and that's what I look at as one of the big benefits of Principia, is these kids are going out into the world with these fresh eyes and fresh enthusiasm to really do something, and it's just absolutely inspiring to me very much. So I'm very grateful to be part of this.
That's wonderful. I'll just add, too, that we now have 3 chapters at universities. The other 7 are not university-related or not student-related, but it's just wonderful to think of, during that time in a person's life to be so engrossed in being a global citizen, and what does that mean, and what does that look like, and how do I be a peace builder, and who are the visionaries out there, and making global connections to people in the region. It just will serve them so well. And we've seen it from people who have graduated from our fellows program, how much it has affected their sense of global outlook and global citizenship and commitment to solving the problems that are facing us today at such an unparalleled level. So it's just, I love that you're seeing that firsthand at the Principia Chapter, and that's now spreading to other schools as well.
Well, since we have TH here, might as well ask him some questions. TH, you're in Portugal right now. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you've been doing since the last time we saw you, which was a year ago almost? Yeah.
Yes, and it's very germane to what you had just mentioned. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting your names, the 2 of you, Laura and
Sally.
Yeah.
And Sally. Last year in wintertime, I guess it was just before I came to Principia, I had taken 6 of my students to Israel and Palestine, to the West Bank. In Israel, we had gone to Mechmaret, Jerusalem, to the Euphrates Institute of the Environment, to Kibbutz Lotan, to Eco Village, to Beersheba, and we've done the mother of all biogas tours, where we had looked at all of the systems of biogas that Ecogas Israel with our friend Yair Teller had done. We looked at the systems I built with Imad Afrash and the Palestinian Wildlife Society. We built a new model of biogas that we developed at Mercy College, or refined at Mercy College. It was actually developed in Egypt, but we refined it at Mercy, and that's what we talked about at Principia, and field tested it for the first time at Kibbutz Lotan for an international group in the Green Apprenticeship Program. So we were spreading this open source knowledge of how to use IBC tanks and water tanks to make very reliable, functional, and useful biogas systems that can provide up to 2 to 4 hours of cooking gas a day or run a small generator for an hour. We then had one of the students who was on that program, Abigail Franco from the Dominican Republic, with her colleague Shamir Hyman, who's said they were so enchanted by the narrative of homeland, returning to one's people, and they said it's wonderful how in Israel you have this strong international coming together from this diaspora to invest in an area. Arab America and more, we're beginning to help in infrastructure, sustainable development. That's what I went to Egypt to do originally, and then to Iraq a year and a half ago.
But I want to echo what TH is saying, is because TH, and why we picked Visionary of the Year last year, is a perfect model of what we were talking about, that tipping point, that 5% and 20%. TH is a visionary who, when faced with looking at the environmental challenges that we're dealing with, doesn't just see despair and hopelessness. He sees that by one biogas digester at a time, you grow it in that village, you spread it, you train, and at the grassroots level, this new technology can actually get us off of dependence on fossil fuels in a clean and environmental way, one little eco-village at a time, and that will eventually reach a tipping point, and we don't have to be slaves to fossil fuels. And so here you are, TH, taking on this enormous problem that most people just look at and shake their hands and walk away, and yet you're doing it every single day, and you're getting us closer to that tipping point. And you're just an example of what I just talked about. Yeah, I think, well, I already talked about, I don't think it's numbers. I don't think we have to have tons of people and a huge budget, because we're really dealing with visionaries, and that is by definition a very small select group of people. And I also, our main philosophy at Euphrates is a sentiment expressed by Albert Einstein, that problems can't be solved at the same level of thinking that created them. And those other huge organizations or even governments that you're talking about are really looking at the problem at that same level of thinking. And in our estimation, that will never actually solve the problem. Looking at the problem of terrorism and conflict just by looking at terrorism and conflict is not actually coming up with solutions to terrorism, conflict, and fear. So we have to look at the opposite. We're looking at the issue from a whole different level of thinking. A level of thinking of, as we talked about, of hope, of peace, of solutions, of our common ground. Not just that they're the enemy, but where's the common ground? Where's the oneness? And how do we program, and how do we solve the problem from there? So it's just a completely different mindset, one based on unity, one based on possibilities of peace, one based in the idea that solutions are already present. We just need to amplify them and share them with the world, and not attacking a problem and not seeing this part of the world as our enemy that we have to destroy, and this just being so tunnel vision looking at terrorism and conflict. So I think our approach is so radical and is such on a different level that that's where a tiny organization with a tiny budget can break through, because it's a mindset shift. We're looking at it in a completely different way and in a new way. So that's that's essentially the plug I would put for Euphrates, and why there's a need for the Euphrates Institute approach, because it's not out there in government thinking or in these bigger organizations.
Great. Well, last question. Running out of time here. What does the next level look like for Euphrates? What's the next level of success? What's the next where are we going from here, where we are?
Yeah, I feel like we're essentially the little fledgling that has just left the nest. So we're just taking off. And to me, the launch of our Chapters program a month and a half ago, and the launch of our new website also in February, and the announcement of our new Principia of the Year, and we're working on this public service announcement that will be broadcast on national television for years. We're finally actually sharing our light more broadly. We've had this wonderful program at a small liberal arts college. We've had the small groups that we've partnered with. We've had conferences on a small scale. But we're realizing that the demand for these ideas in the world right now is so critical that we have to let our light shine. We have to share it more broadly and more widely. And we just started doing that in the past couple months. So what does that look like is, what does it look like to grow this Chapters program from 10 to 100 to 10,000 to 100,000, and how do we celebrate even more visionaries? I mean, here's the gauge. What if we could celebrate 10 people a year, like the work that he's doing, and connect them and support them and amplify those efforts? I mean, there's so much good happening out there, and we just want to strengthen it. We want to be bigger. Yes, please, TH.
if I could just add to that, I've always used Roger's model of innovation diffusion in all of my classes to guide our Solar Cities NGO, connecting community catalysts integrating technologies for industrial ecology. So models, you know, talk about how, on average, there's about 2.5% of any given population that are innovators, about 13.5%, you talked about this in some of your own work, who are early adopters, and then there's the greater pool of middle to late adopters, and then there's the laggards. And we figured if we just focused on 2.5% of the population, having faith that they're always there, statistically speaking, whenever you have a sample of at least 100 people, so you can always find about 2 or 3 people out of every 100 who are your mental allies in this, or spiritual allies. And it doesn't matter whether they're from Al-Qaeda, or they're from ISIS, or they're from whatever the enemy du jour is. Out of every 100 of them, there's going to be about 2 or 3 people who really are thinking like we are and want to do this. Number of people across the planet, we have plenty of allies to work with in every location, and we don't have to worry about the laggards yet, because it's going to take us a lifetime to gather together all of these fellow delegates from that 2.5%, as long as we are willing to find them in every population. So it's not just the elite taking the 2.5% of the elite. Have faith that they're in the poorest communities, the poorest educated, the people who you think are the most divergent from your philosophy. That innovation and difference is everywhere, and all we have to do, I think, is cultivate that and see that. Then the tipping point's reached.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Janessa, so much for your time. Thank you, TH, for joining us from Portugal. Thank you, Laura and Sally, for representing our chapters program. And thank you so much, Joy, for being on the board of directors and helping us with this work. And thank you to all of our viewers, too. We so appreciate you taking the time to ask questions and to be participating in this experiment on how Hangouts work and that kind of thing.
We'll have to do it again.
Yes,
it was fun.
Absolutely. And so with our best wishes, have a wonderful weekend, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
So,
Bye.
good luck to
Bye.
Portugal.